Hi, my name is Claudia, and this presentation is going to talk about wines of Mexico. So the reason why I chose to do a presentation about Mexican wines in the industry is because I myself am Mexican, and I don't know a lot, if anything, other than Mexico has wine. I don't know anything about the industry down there. I don't know where the regions are. I don't know what grapes they grow. I didn't know anything, so I decided to dig a little bit more into the history of my country and what wineries there are and be more informed. So before anything, just a little bit of history. So in the 16th century, the colonization happened. So that is when Spanish came to conquer Mexico. More specifically, they came to and found the Aztecs in Tenochtitlan. So when they arrived, they found Vitis sylvestris grapes. So these grapes are, as many of you may or may not know, they're not ideal for making wine. So when Hernan Cortés, who is the main person who carried the colonization, when he found out that these were the kind of grapes that were in place, he ordered for Vinus vinifera grapes to be brought from Europe and planted. Now, this plantings and this industry on its own was a means of money, and it was very political. It's stating that for every native, they would have to plant a certain amount of vines. So with this, many monks started planting and just planted all over the place. However, in the 1800s, during the independence, this set a pause and, well, mostly a setback to the industry, as many wine growers had to leave the country. Moreover, it just pretty much stopped, and there was a huge backdrop on the wine industry, and thus since then the industry has been struggling to grow, and that's why the tequila and mezcal industry is bigger, and that's why Mexico is most known for. However, in 1948, the Asociación Nacional de Viticultores, which is the National Association for Viticulture, came to be in order to just provide an answer to the demands that were starting to come again to this sector. So it mostly to protect growers. This eventually turned into El Consejo Mexicano Vinícola, which is the Viticultural Mexican Council. And we are going to be talking more about them because they play a big role into how Mexican wine and the industry has been growing over the years. So today there are 12 growing regions, with this one's being the most important. Northern Baja California, Sonora, Durango, Coahuila, Zacatecas, Aguascalientes, and Querétaro. Later in this presentation, we're also going to touch a little bit on a few of them, the most important ones. So, at present, there has been an increase over the past 5 years from 450 milliliters consumed per capita to 950 milliliters. So there's a bigger consumption in the industry for Mexican wine, well, in Mexico. However, out of this, Mexico is only able to satisfy 30% of the national demand. And this is because most of the wines that are made in Mexico are actually exported. So that is a problem, that's an issue that they have to overcome. Nonetheless, also in the last 5 years, Mexico has won 1,500 medals in international competitions. So this just shows how Mexico is really trying to push that international awareness, and they're trying to be more in the map of the wine world. So the main varieties that grow all throughout Mexico are Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc, Moscatel, Riesling, and Semillon. However, there are more reds that are grown here, and there are a few reasons for that. One of the main ones is because Mexico, and this is a curious fact, Mexico's biggest and highest consumption is actually red wine, where 6.5 out of 10 bottles are bought and consumed are red, and that's just whether Mexican wine or just international wine. And Mexico has very, very hot temperatures, so it's no surprise that they would prefer, and the reds would do better here. So Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Nebbiolo, Tempranillo, Grenache, Malbec, Cabernet Franc, Syrah or Shiraz, Petit Syrah, and Zinfandel. Now, most of the grapes, or most of the wines, are usually blended, and just recently the individual variety have been more known. So now Mexico doesn't have any, or didn't have any laws that were very specific until last year, March 2018, where there is now a law for promotion of the national viticulture industry. We'll talk more about that. Other than that, there are no real laws or regulations for the styles or for the grapes that are planted. Todos Unidos por el Vino Mexicano, which is Everyone United for the Mexican Wine, it's a campaign more than anything by the Mexican Viticulture Council, Consejo Mexicano Vitivinícola, which is CMV, and the National Commission of Governors. And what it is, more than anything, is, so they have the law for the promotion of the national viticulture industry, and this is an incentive to have the collective mark, to have the seal in your bottle of wine that says Vino Mexicano, so Mexican wine. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. The other goal is to increase the Mexican wine consumption both nationally and internationally, but mostly to bring more people to consume Mexican wine and focus in Mexico first through tourism. So there are many programs, and there's a lot of advertisements and promotions to bring people to these wine regions. And then their third goal is to expand production. So this whole program and campaign is meant to take 10 to 15 years, and their goal is to increase 45% of internal consumption and local consumption, and to bring the production up to 4.5 million millions of liters. Now, the law, as we might be able to call it now, as it's in place, this law guarantees that if you have this seal here, Vino Mexicano, it guarantees the origin of the grapes, the quality, and that they're sustainable. The wineries are. And it also makes it easier for the consumers to identify the region and to identify the wine characteristics. Now, in order to follow in order to get this seal, the wine must be 100% of grapes planted in Mexico and 100% fermented and bottled in national territory. So this also helps or makes the winemakers to compromise to follow better winemaking practices. Now, the influences for how the wine is made, there aren't a lot of records that state what viticulture practices they carry or winemaking, and let alone later on what kind of topography they have. But the VSP trellis system is the most common, where they have two wires, and the top wire is for the fruit, and the bottom wire is for irrigation, and that's because Mexico is so hot they can't depend on rainfall. And they tend to do staggered harvests, so they harvest different batches, and that way they can also ferment them at different stages throughout the growing season. And the winemaking, since the law is not very specific as to the styles, the winemakers have artistic freedom. They can do whatever styles they want, do whatever blends they want, but they mostly ferment in stainless steel, and they do their oak aging from 12 to 24 months in French oak, although they can also do it in American oak. Now, the climate influences, they have both the Mediterranean and the desert. We'll get more into it once we talk about the three most important regions. In the topography, as I said, there are not many records on what kind of soils they have, but it's mostly clay, sandy loam, and Sonora is right here. And it's mostly a deserted area. They only started focusing on making wine 3 years ago, and they're mostly known for their brandies. Now, the second region that we'll talk about is Coahuila. Coahuila is very dry and it's very warm too, so there's a lot of irrigation, and they do both white and red grapes, such as Chardonnay, Semillon, Cabernet Franc, Cab Sauv. And one of the oldest wineries, like I was mentioning at the beginning of the presentation, is here called Casa Madero, which was planted way back when the colonization happened. Finally, the most important region, the biggest producer, the one that contributes the most to the production of wine in Mexico, Baja California del Norte. So it's basically northern Baja California, and that would be essentially just here. In total, the biggest producers, the biggest regions, contribute to 72% of the wine production of the total wine production in Mexico. And this, in Baja California, it's already only 30% of the contribution, so that's the majority of it. Baja California, since it's over on the coast, the weather is Mediterranean, and that means that they have very humid winters and very hot and dry summers. And it's no surprise if you look at this picture, there's fog in the morning, so that will contribute a lot to the ideal conditions for growing grapes. Now, they do Bordeaux style wines, so they grow Cabernet, Merlot, Malbec, but they also grow Tempranillo, Nebbiolo, and Petit Syrah. And the biggest sub-region from Baja California is Valle de Guadalupe. In Valle de Guadalupe, the temperature ranges from 30 degrees Celsius during the summer to 5 degrees Celsius in the winter. So that's where we were talking about the Mediterranean style. So same as the other regions, although there is some rainfall, they can depend on that, and that's why they also use irrigation. So with that being a quick overview and the wine industry of Mexico and how big Mexico is going to become, or they're trying to become, there's a lot of government help in order to reach this, and by educating winemakers, bringing winemakers to Mexico to work, as also as implementing some laws and regulations. Thank you very much.